Miriam, tell me, what was the importance and the inspiration for you doing this film?
Well, Rhythms of Unheard Voices came in the midst of me dealing with domestic violence on a different level, like a psychological and emotional level. It was more, um, you know, I was choked a couple times, and then, decades later, it was slowly, emotional abuse, and it was financial abuse. It was just little subtle things that would keep me from being happy. I felt caged. I felt like an animal. I felt disregarded. I felt unimportant. And being around and learning about domestic violence led me know that I was experiencing domestic violence. So I sat there and the Lord just downloaded some things that I was going through, downloaded some things that other women were going through, and the need to put it out there was important to me because someone needs to hear that there's hope, because I made it. There's a lot of women out there who are survivors and they ain't that woman anymore. You can be one that says, I ain't that woman anymore. That's all this film is made for, just to encourage someone not to be that woman anymore.
Wonderful. You pretty much answered my second question. What would be your hopes for women to receive from this film, and how can you encourage other women to say, I ain't that woman anymore?
Well, you have to get to a level, no one can make you free. You have to be free yourself. You have to free yourself. No one could say, Miriam, just leave. I had to have the faith and the courage to leave, to do it myself. That's why I think so many times women go back, because I was in a relationship and I did go back. So I think you have to find it within yourself that, look, I'm worth more than this. I can make it by myself. I can be happy within myself, because no man is an island. We need other people. It's not by myself. But with the help of the Lord, anything is possible. With man, ain't nothing possible. With God, all things are possible. And what I want everyone, be it male or female, to take away from this movie is there's life after this. Hope is reachable, and moving forward is a must.
Awesome. I'd like to personally thank you for making this available for other women. And last but not least, what would you say to women that are going through or dealing with domestic violence at the present moment?
I'm praying for you. I'm praying for your courage. And I'm also praying for that person who sees you that needs to step up to help you.
This message is titled Because. Because he said he loved me. Because he said he would change. Because he said he would never do it again. Because he said, and I believed him.
My husband, the man that said he would love and cherish me, has caused my vision to be blurry from constantly blackening my eyes. Two of my molars on the left side are gone because I didn't cook what he wanted. I have a limp because he knocked me down the stairs. I didn't go to the doctors because if I told them the truth, they might lock him up and the bills would not get paid. I don't work. I'm living and depending on his income, and it's depressing at times. When I tried to call for help on the phone, by the time they called back, he was home. He answered the phone and told them that everything was okay. He then twisted my arm so far back that the pain weakened my knees and I fell to the floor. He then kicked me in my ribs and stomach. As I was grasping for air, he told me that he loved me. As he stepped over me, he said if I would do what he said, he wouldn't have to punish me. But looking in this distorted mirror, I realized that my reflection is unnoticeable. My vision is blurry and my senses are numb. My thoughts were to end my life, but I'm a coward and I couldn't ask for forgiveness or help. Memories of him keeping me away from my family because he loved me, asking me to stay home from church and have a pleasant day because he loved me, getting bars put on the windows and the doors, he said for security reasons, but only he had a key. Oh, because he loved me. Saying he wanted a son, but when he found out that we were having a girl, he took me, tied me to the bed, put a telephone book on me, and punched me in the stomach. The next day I had to get a DNC from the miscarriage because he loved me. Constantly begging for my life and pleading, please don't, because he loved me. Lord, I thank you for my health and strength. But right now I have a request. I really need you. I need the judge to show me leniency for manslaughter because I loved him.
This message is titled Omnipresent. Lean not on your own understanding. Be aware of your heart's desires and trust God.
You were supposed to love and cherish me with all of your heart. You promised me that you'd cover me lest we die and become apart. You said we'd be one and you would handle my needs. And behind the bedroom door, it was only supposed to be me.
Yeah, I promise to be your everything, as you promised to be mine. I promise to cover and protect you through the good and the bad times. I promise to be your provider. I promise to comfort you. When you were sad, I promise to be your smile. All I wanted to do was to love you. I promise to be your king. Come what may, I would have given the world to you, but you had to do what I said.
You promised to love and cherish me with all of your heart. You promised to cover my needs, Lord. I'm a part of the body. You said the Lord is my shepherd, and I shall not want. I was choked and emotionally abused. Where were you, God?
Who are you talking to? I loved you first, not took a part of myself and placed it into the womb of a virgin. My son died for this earth. I have loved and protected you ever since you was in your mother's womb. I had grace and mercy following you to keep you out of a tomb. You replaced me wholeheartedly with the man who lavished you with gifts. Your prayers to me had slowed down and your praises went to him. I knew he wasn't right for you, but it was a desire of your heart. I can't go back on my word. Look at the footprints. It's one set. I carried you. I have never departed. I brought you out and saw you through. Your testimony is for another who isn't as strong as you. Now go. Move forward. People are waiting for you. another relationship will come, and next time you'll know what not to do.
I'm sorry, God. And thank you for another chance. Thank you for putting a smile on my face and a joyful song to my dance. As I journey through this life, it's you who I'll represent. I fully understand now that the path isn't always clear, but surely it's always present.
This message is titled, Someone Touched My Child. As parents, let's make our children feel comfortable enough to share of themselves if someone has violated them. Please watch as we have these two young teenagers who have choreographed a story through dance of Someone Touched My Child.
Someone touched my child. Someone touched my child and took away her laughter. Someone tried to take her peace, causing a moment of disaster. Quieted by her discomfort, she could not tell her mommy, and mommy never asked, "Did someone touch your body?" Someone touched my child in an attempt to steal her joy, and her trust in man was suddenly destroyed. Her external growth concealed the internal pain. Someone touched my child for ill-gotten gain. This interruption of her childhood caused a downward spiraling of chain events. She was thirsting for a loving man that could never be quenched. Her desire of a physical attraction was turned around by her soul's interaction. She prayed, "Lord, take away the anger and mistrust, because I have a testimony. Heal my heart, renew my faith, and restore my laughter. Take away this dark cloud. I need to feel your sun. Thank you for keeping me and sustaining me through the memories." Jesus grabbed my baby and held her in his arms, and the guilt that was placed on her was received with open arms. Her tearful acceptance of realizing it wasn't her, but the sickness of another that tried to cause turmoil. Her deliverance caused an upgrade in others that were also bound. Her testimony was received and her new direction found. Hello, introduce yourself.
I am Edward Parham, and I've worked in urban education for the past 25 years.
Thank you very much. I wanted to ask you, how do you recognize a student or young person that's going through domestic violence? And then when you do, what steps do you take to keep the education going without there being a gap with education?
Well, you don't always recognize that it's domestic violence itself. Once you build some type of relationship with your students, as you ought to, you will notice that there are some things that are unusual about a young person. They may be more reserved, they may be sleepy, just something that's not quite right. And as concerned and as a professional, you will question it in some kind of way. But the key thing is building some type of relationship with the child where they feel free enough to share something that they may be going through. And in a lot of cases, it may not be domestic violence, but we know that domestic violence is another area where our young people may be suffering from some type of trauma.
Okay, and when you say trauma, because I understand it's not always physical, it could be emotional. So, how do you deal with the emotional part? Are there counselors that they can go to, and what other things are put in place, procedures are put in place?
What makes most schools more effective or most effective is when you do have resources and specialists who know how to address or to deal with students who may be going through some type of trauma. And since we're talking about domestic violence, if that's an issue, you have your student counselor, you have your school counselor, you have your social workers, and other resources. And then we can refer them, if not to other outside resources, to find out in detail what may be going on in the home. It may be with the child, or if the child is just a witness to domestic violence in the home.
Are your hands tied as far as how much you can help that child as an educator?
You know, your hands aren't really tied. Once again, if you go back to the building of relationships, then children will tell you what's going on. And they may not even describe it as domestic violence, but if you get to the details of what's going on, you may have to define it as domestic violence, or the specialist may have to define it as domestic violence, and then you sort of work from there. I always say the best practice is if you see something, say something. Even if you question exactly what it may be, that's why we need to work together collaboratively as a team so we can get to the bottom of what may be going on with a young person. Because, of course, if any type of trauma is going on in a child's life or in a child's home, that's bound to have an effect on the schoolhouse. And when I say an effect on the schoolhouse, it may affect the child's socio-emotional status, it may affect their attendance, and it definitely may affect their academic progress.
So, do you see a lot of it because it's because of location? I know domestic violence doesn't have a particular environment, but because the children are coming from so many different homes, where you work in particular, is it a high account of domestic violence?
You know, I really can't say the numbers because as far as for my career, I worked in the urban environment, and there are a number of traumatic events and incidents that our children encounter. I can say that it is one of the areas where our children do suffer some type of trauma. And because of that, it has to be addressed in some type of way when the child feels free enough to share with someone. We live in an age now where a lot of people say what happens in the home stays in the home. That only matters to a certain degree, but anything that traumatizes our children, they have to feel free to share with some adult in the building based on relationship. This is what I'm experiencing, even if they don't know how to define it. The key thing is defining it, and a lot of times our children don't define it as domestic violence. You know, if mommy fussed at daddy, or daddy fussed at mom, or daddy put his hands on mom, they'll tell it in that way. And we, as specialists and as experts, seasoned and trained, and sometimes untrained, we have to define that domestic violence, and then from there we have to deal with it as such.
Thank you very much. As this information goes out, I hope it helps another educator in dealing with domestic violence and our children. Are there any last words or any advice?
My advice is always, once again, get to know your students, and if you think you see something, say something.
Thank you.
Identity theft. I fought for me. Fight for you. Fight for emotional, spiritual, mental, and physical well-being of self. Fight for you.
Hello, my name is Rochelle Crawford, and I was a Jane Doe.
Where are you from?
Born and raised in Philadelphia, West Philly to be exact.
Oh, okay. All right, now thinking back on this attack, it may bring up some triggers for anyone in our audience and you also. So we're letting people know ahead of time that there may be some triggers. So, did you sense something was wrong in the area that you were? Well, you know what? What got you to that area that night?
That particular day, I had been getting high and hustling, and I came from getting high, and I got an uneasy feeling, but I thought it was because I just finished using. I wasn't aware of the car that was rolling down the street or the man that walked up asking me if I knew where someone lived. And when that car turned the corner, the man grabbed me, put a knife to my throat, pulled me into a lot. When he turned me around, he punched me so hard in the middle of my face, it broke my glasses. I saw stars and heard birds, just like the comics.
Wow. During the attack, did you ever go in and out of consciousness? Was he speaking to you? What was going on besides, I know chaos.
I do remember him saying some things, asking for my money. The Lord was very merciful. Most of the attack, I was unconscious. I came to see his shadow with his arms above his head, throwing a slab of cement. I came to being kicked in the mouth. I came to with no clothes on and my whole body aching.
Did he leave you for dead? Did he say anything, or you passed out again? How did you find strength to get up when you became conscious?
I believe he thought he had killed me. I really believe he thought I was dead. God is the one, Jesus is the one that got me up and managed to guide me to the house where people lived. When I came to, I was on my back on the porch. I remember lifting my leg up, kicking at the door. By then, both my eyes were closed. I remember hearing the lady's voice saying, "Oh my God, dial 911." And that was it.
So you were at the hospital with no ID, no clothes. You weren't aware of where you were, or where did you know who you were when you came to? What happened? What was your first reaction when you woke up in the hospital?
My first thing was how much I hurt. From head to toe, I hurt. I got up to go to the restroom, and there was a mirror there over the zinc as soon as I came in, and I saw myself. And I don't believe I totally remembered at that time what had happened. The nurse came in and she said, "Oh, you're up, And she went on to tell me how I was unconscious for 3 days and I was a Jane Doe.
Wow. Wow. So this was a sense of not only you being assaulted, but your identity was kind of taken. No one knew who you were. But, the victorious part was how you came through and later on got married. But I remember you telling me you still had some issues because of the attack.
Oh, yes. I was blessed enough to go and get myself help for my addiction, and I had begun to learn how to handle being out after dark. I was blessed to conquer my addiction. Thank God. And I had the opportunity to start a brand new life. Thank God.
So this gentleman, your prince, so did he work with you on, did he understand the situation? What was the conversation you had with him? And was he, well, evidently he was going to work with you.
Yes, he was not ignorant. He was very patient. He took the time to listen. It wasn't a rush. It was not overpowering. We worked together. I helped him with some things, and he helped me with some things, and he loved me. In spite of all the things that I thought would chase someone away, he gave me my identity. He helped me know that it's okay. I'm okay today.
Look at you with your identity restored, Rochelle. So look, to encourage others, how else have you moved forward?
Most of all, you have to pray. You gotta keep Jesus number one. Without him, it's nothing. I find that when I take time to enjoy things that make me happy, it's more than just at that moment. It brings me through. I enjoy the sunlight today. I believe in doing crafts. I like to decorate. I like people. I love people. I didn't allow him to steal all of me.
You know what? There's a verse that says, in Christ we are a new creature. And you know what? I love the new in you. Thank you, Rochelle.
Thank you.
And I know this is going to encourage someone, move someone's heart, and open someone's eyes.
I pray peace and love and health to everyone who's had someone try to steal you away.
Hello, introduce yourself and tell us about your organization.
Hi, my name is Lisa Whitehead. Thank you for having me. I am the founder of the nonprofit faith-based organization called Victims in the Sanctuary.
Victims in the Sanctuary. So domestic violence is in sanctuaries?
There are two ways that we say that. The first one is domestic violence in the church. And yes, there is. That's one of the reasons why we can't address domestic violence like we should, because pastors are abusers, pastors are perpetrators, faith leaders are abusers. And when it comes down to having to choose faith over money or faith over some other issues that impact our victims, and so the abuser comes to church. So we see that in all areas: the pulpit, the congregation, amongst the leaders, and the least of them that are victims are the children, which go to our children's church. And children's church workers are blind to the fact of what they see.
Wow. So what could we do to de-escalate besides, having your organization come by and train churches correctly?
Right. So one of the first things that we do is if the victim is a part of the congregation, there's no way of knowing whether the pastor, how he feels about it, or the deacons or the leaders of the church, they aren't forthcoming about victims that sit in their congregations. They know, but they're not victims, in the congregation.
So how can we switch from victims to victors? What
Right.
cooperations do you need?
We definitely need resources, which can include victims in the sanctuary, which can include victims in emergency shelters. Even survivors still need support. And so we hold a support group for a survivor, and then we make it child friendly to talk about it with children. And I know you said, what we're doing. I think we're not doing enough, not because of our lack of organization, but because the pastor's not ready to talk about it in the congregation.
I know people are always saying what happens at home stays at home. And we found that to be incorrect because
Very.
a lot of things that happen at home are not good. They're not well. They're not they're not allowing people to function properly in society once they leave. So
Right.
when they're coming to church to praise God and worship God, what about restraint orders? Do they play a part? Are pastors obligated to respect the restraint orders?
So I did a protective order and pastors to get together, so share some ideas about how we can improve or impact pastors to not just pray, because 31 days in October you pray, and then the other 11 you don't do anything else. So I think it has to be a real cooperation. Feel is good, but if you don't feel it, you still need to do it, because there is somebody in church, whether it's a victim, whether it's a survivor, and the children, someone's getting the word. But I feel ashamed to say us preachers are coming behind in the last leg.
Have you had to, or have you experienced domestic violence in any church settings that turned into funerals?
Well, there's two parts to that. So one of the funerals that I was at was a young lady that I went to church with. We didn't know till afterwards, during the funeral, during the whole service, that this woman was stabbed over 30 times by just one person. And what's insane about this is that we saw her the day before. It was a church picnic, and the church didn't catch him looking at her, because that's psychology in domestic violence. When the batterer starts sending messages to the abused, to the victims, but no one else can see what that eye means. Nobody else can know body language, but you as the victim know what's going on. He won't let you talk to any friends. He came and y'all left. And so that should have been a telltale sign for us. But we only knew it when she was murdered. And her 6-year-old and the baby was a newborn, watched that 6-year-old life is impacted forever, having to go to counseling, understand what domestic violence is, because at 6, you don't know. You just know you need to take the baby and hide in the closet, which is what she did. And from the closet, she saw her mother being stabbed over 60 times. There's another preacher, someone had died in her congregation, and I went to show my support to the pastor and to the families, which is our first commitment. But there she laid in the casket with flowers on top of the casket, and the pastor was weeping. She was crying. You could see how remorse she was. And then afterwards, she explained that that couple was the first couple that she counseled as a pastor. And so you can only imagine the impact that would feel standing at the casket, looking but unable to close it. And we walked up there and stood behind the pastor.
I can't imagine how difficult that was for that pastor to preach or say a sermon over that casket. My heart goes out to them and any other pastor. This subject is really touchy. So what do you think should be done? What kind of laws? What is this interview for? We want to reach out for help. Mm-hmm. We're not just here to tell a story. Mm-hmm. We want to inform. Mm-hmm. So what could you say to educate that pastor or educate that victim?
Well, the first thing that I want to say is there's a national number that victims can call. It's a toll-free number. They have hotline counselors and advocates ready to help 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I worked for the House of Ruth, Maryland, when during this time, it was about 15 years that I gave to my life, the emergency shelter. I was a supervisor, and it pained me. It pained me to send pastors away that wanted to come to drop supplies off and not know that that person doesn't know we know they're an abuser. And there are people from his church that go to the shelter and that a preacher would be surprised because he is one of the perpetrators of that ministry. It's a terrible business to have to deal with such violence from people, all types of people, not just one, all types of people, race, regardless of race, religion, gender, sexual orientation. Domestic violence is domestic violence.
I agree. I definitely agree. Thank you so much. You've been informative, and I hope this helps someone.
This message is titled Dead on Point. What will it take to change? The empty chair represents all the women who have been and will be muted of this subject matter. Let's not be muted any longer.
Reflecting on yesteryear, my husband and I were happy. Praying and worshiping together was beautiful, and the love we shared felt natural. Time has created a distance, and our emotions are now apart. It started with arguing and name-calling. Now it's physical. My husband has broken my heart. Lord, Lord, I'm in distress, and my pastor says to pray. But I know when I go home from service, I'll get another beating today. I got a restraint order, but during Sunday school he showed up again. The pastor gave him a nod as he answered,
"Hey, praise the Lord."
And I'm in church and in fear again. As I was trying to be attentive to the Sunday school teacher going over the lesson, I was interrupted by his stare of corruption. I guess in church the restraint order isn't good. I heard him whisper to a brother,
"My wife over there, sister such and such, she thinks she's slick. But I'll be waiting for her in front of the house. Oh yeah, She's gonna get
Jesus,
it.
have mercy. My husband, this man who promised to love and cherish me, is going through. And I don't understand why he thinks black eyes and bruises are a thing of beauty. Later during the week, she called the pastor. She said weakly, very, very weakly, "Pastor, Pastor, please pray for me. I'm in the hospital. And when you pray for me, I don't feel your concern. I actually feel belittled." He prayed,
Lord, teach her how to be submissive. The vows say to trust and obey. Sister, what's that sound? I just hear a long beat.
Hello? This is the doctor. We couldn't save her. Hannah has gone to sleep.
dead on point. What will it take to change?
This message is titled A Place of Repeat. A place of repeat will have us in the same position, but only at a different location, unless we change our mindset to not be in the same location with the same position.
I've been sitting in one place for 10 long years. I've cried silently as I've digested salted tears. I've been sitting in this jail. I've tried to keep it together while experiencing carnal fears. I've been sitting in one place for 10 long years, stewing and brewing in hatred while embracing death every day, every moment. Every agonizing minute seemed familiar, and I felt that the end was near, regulated to eat, sleep, and shout, feeling raped all over again. During those personal hours, I cried and pleaded, "Lord, why am I here? That man deserved to die. I killed him," and released my fears. I sat there just as still as his body was. I was pondering over the 7 years. I gave my love. I gave my life. I gave of me. I thought, now I'm free. Freedom was lost again as the jury yelled, "Guilty." What about my black and blue eyes? What about the bruises on my back? What about my broken arm? Does anyone care about that? Imprisoned again with the same feelings, just a different setting. Crouched down in the same position, just in a different location. Was it all worthwhile? Yes and no. Yet, here I am, and in the system all alone. I deserve a second chance. I deserve happiness. I deserve to see my child. I cower in the same position. It's just in a different corner. Will I die here? Will there be any mourners? My family stopped coming through. I'm a forgotten soul. My Lord, what's up next? What's next for me, God? And then I heard Jesus. And he said, what's next for you is learning to love yourself and to have a peace of mind. What's next is you reading my word and finding out that you were never alone. I've been with you all the time. What's next is life more abundantly and freedom. Freedom for me. What's next is unconditional love. Have faith. Trust in me. What's next is you telling others about being forgiven wholeheartedly. You know what? The girl in that cell down, She needs to hear about my friend. Even though I'm in this place, I'm finally free.
Hello, Dr. Twyla Coffin. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you, Miriam. How are you?
I'm doing fine. We're going to talk about um, domestic violence as it pertains to children because you're a teacher. So we're going to come from your point of view. You know, what does that child look like that doesn't have bruises physically, that doesn't have physical bruises that you can see? How can you tell that they've been affected by domestic violence?
I was a teacher and I taught sixth graders, and then I went to the high school and I taught ninth to 12th grade. The sixth grade children was my major experience, and they are affected in a different way than the high schoolers were. My sixth grade students, oftentimes, it's the times that they are able to do their own writing. When I would give them a writing prompt, they would write something in the story that just seemed so dark. And I read everything that the students, even the most sentences that they had, spelling words, the sentences that they used, even if the sentences weren't structured properly, there was something in the sentence that you know, something dark and just uncomfortable. I would always talk to each individual student and ask them, what were you thinking when you wrote this? What made you write this? Do you dream about stuff like this at night? And then it's those type of conversations that a child will feel comfortable enough with you to say, well, no, I kind of, they kind of stammer and stutter a little bit. But you also see how the child who's super timid in class, I always try to have a relationship with the parents or whoever is the guardian for the children. My thing was to, within a month and a half, make face with them. If I had to go to your house and knock on your door and talk to you for 7 to 12 minutes, that's what I did. Now, that isn't the way that the school systems and the school boards would want you to do. But again, I taught children in some of the hardest communities in Ohio, and children who were born into circumstances that they have no control of for certain. And many of my children had parents who were addicted, recovering, single parents struggling, grandparents, or someone in their family was locked up, going to be locked up, or just came out of a facility. The children would be withdrawn for no reason. Say, for instance, we're doing a real playful activity, and I tried to incorporate a lot of playful activities because that's how I incorporate learning. The children with a particular child would kind of just be offstandish or super mean for no apparent reason. But because the reason isn't apparent doesn't mean there isn't a reason. I know everyone has their own personality and everyone manifests joy and sorrow in different ways. But children are pretty basic. They're pretty in the same vein. And I had this one particular student. She would come to school and she didn't have socks. And these children were in uniform to school, and her socks would have holes in them. And she would take the socks off when she got to school. And I said, "Where's your socks?" "Oh, I like my legs like this." And she gave an excuse. What I found out was that she had some stockings at home. And what had happened was one time her mom had strangled her with her stockings. And so she had this fear of taking away anything that could be a weapon, used against her. That child later on started sharing things with me about the household because what I told her was, I said, "Your legs are beautiful. Well, let's see what kind of socks we can get for you." So I bought some Bobby socks for her. So even though we live in Ohio and it's dead of winter, she was thankful to wear the Bobby socks. And she never would wear knee highs, and she definitely didn't wear the stockings. Within a year and a half, that child was dead. And
My God.
I had talked to the principal of the school about what I had noticed because I started having an after school program and I would take children home afterwards, and that gave me a better insight about the children I was teaching. Sometimes I'd take this child and her sisters home, there was no one to take them home to. They were too young to be left alone. You have a sixth grader, a fourth grader, one in the second, one in first grade, and I'm not going to leave those children alone. So I would sit in the driveway for an hour or two. I'd take them to get something to eat. We'd come back. Then the mom and her boyfriend would be thankful. A child ran away from home, came to school one day with some bruises. I had to call to report the bruises. The bruises were not visible on outside. That child revealed to me, and I felt uncomfortable going in that cloakroom looking at that child's bruises, so I called a non-administrator to come there with me. And I also called the child's sibling because I wanted to make sure there was someone else to protect me from looking at this child's back. And looking at her back, she was bruised and beaten pretty bad. She never told why, but she did say who. Because the services, especially housing services, the social services, received the answers that they wanted from the parents and from the adults in the household. Nothing happened. The case was opened, the case was closed without incident. That child died a few years later, but it was from the neglect that she had incurred from a medical condition that she had. And I often wonder what I could have done differently. I know as a teacher you're limited into the things you can do, but I would say that children who are in houses with domestic violence, they're not that hard to pick out. I will share one more student. I had a student who was in 8th grade, and by the time she was in 8th grade, she became real sullen. I was her teacher for 7th grade, and then she moved to 8th grade. We were in the same building. And she became real sullen.
She became what?
Real sullen.
Sullen.
She went from this joyful girl to this really sorrowful, depressed child. Her performance in school dropped. She became disinterested in everything. I ended up getting transferred to another building. And before I left that building, I talked to her and she was saying, well, you just wouldn't understand. You just wouldn't understand. I said, well, try me. I might understand something. And she said, I don't think that you ever lived my life. I said, I might not have lived your life, but don't think I don't understand. And she said that her mom's husband had sexually assaulted her. So when a child tells you that,
yes,
I can't investigate any further than take her at her word. I told the principal.
Mm-hmm.
The principal, and I told the principal the protocol. The principal told me I did my job and that was it. Removed me from the whole scene. I don't know what happened at that time as far as follow-up. And I was transferred to another building. Before that school year came to a close, she had committed suicide. She hung herself, what she did. She hung herself. And she was a friend of one of my children. And she hung herself, and my daughter said, can we go see her? She was at the hospital. They didn't have her at the children's house, and they had her at the adult hospital in acute care. I went to that hospital. My daughter was in the car, and I said, let me go first and see if we can find what room she's in, because I didn't know where I expect to see. And this was the second or third day that she was at the hospital. When I went to her room, they were cleaning the room, and she had expired.
Mm-hmm.
Found out she was pregnant by her stepfather, and her mom was angry with her. And between the two, they had beaten her, and she couldn't take it anymore.
My God.
The thing that made me
are
angry.
you saying?
Go ahead.
Okay, no, go ahead.
The thing that made me angriest about it was that I was no longer teaching at that school. I was at another school. The school I was working at was within proximity of the funeral home. And when I went, I had asked to get off work to go to this funeral. Not one teacher from that school was at that funeral. Not one administrator. Not one teacher.
So, what do you think that could be put in place to help these victims? Because at this point, I'm sniffing for that child, and not just for that child, but other children who are going through, and the only person they see outside of the person that's abusing them is a teacher. What would you say to a teacher that feel like her hands might be tied or is not recognizing what's going on?
First, I would ask, are you in the right profession?
Oh,
You know,
yes,
just because you are educated doesn't mean that you have the gift of teaching. And the gift of teaching comes with compassion. You are that healer. You are that mentor. You are that guide. You are that social worker. You are that doctor. You are that thing because you spend more time with people's children than they spend with their own children. These children with you the majority of their lives, the majority of the day, save the summer. But you're that person, and you're that safe space and that safe place. And you have to understand that you need to be intimately involved in every face that comes into your classroom. And that means that's work, and that's work off the clock too. You have to tell yourself, I'm here to be the conduit for their success.
Okay. Oh, wow. Is there something you want to say to that child that might be going through something and doesn't know who to turn to?
I would first tell that child it's not your fault. Tell yourself it's not your fault. And just say it over and over and over again. It's not my fault. It's not my fault. Because you have to find that first sentence to deflect some of the guilt that you have. Secondly, I tell that child to write things down. To write it down. To write your anger, write your fears. Even if you just draw pictures. Draw these pictures. And then draw the pictures of what you want to see. How you want it to be. And draw words how you want to feel. And if you don't know anything else to do after those things, then take those pictures of those things you've written and take them to a counselor at your school. Take them to the one adult that you trust. That might not even be your teacher. That might be someone at your church. That might be someone at your grocery store. But find that one adult that you trust. They don't have to have a PhD or a GED. Just that one adult that you trust. And take that to them. Take it to them and say, please help. That's it. Just please help. You don't have to explain. You don't have to try to find the words. And stand there and don't leave. Just let them know it's not my fault. Please help. I am so certain that if a person receives that message from a child, that even the person doesn't know anything else to do, they would call. Even if they call the police, who would then call a social worker or someone else. And I think some school districts need to have more loving hands inside of school buildings. You need to have more people from the community, grandmoms, uncles and aunts that have passion towards children in a healthy way. We need to have more resources in schools. School counselors are swamped with disciplinary reasons, disciplinary actions. They don't even have the time to try to get to what caused that child to be a disciplinary issue because they're dealing with trying to maintain order in the school building. So it's a quick fast. But we need to have more trained therapists. There needs to be more therapeutic facilities inside school buildings. They don't have any place for therapy. You need to have a timeout room, a room you just can go sit down. A child who's disrupted in class doesn't need to go to SSI or ISS. They don't need to be thrown out of school. Sometimes they just need a place to go sit down, and the office isn't the place because the office is where people have punitive action and people walk in, and so a person who's already defensive is already going to be more defensive. But we use jails, juvenile detention centers as and psychiatric wards and hospitals as these babysitting stations. I'm not saying there isn't a need for these things in their due season, but we use them as the answer for the problem. And we're never ever able to have enough on staff that are qualified. And qualified doesn't mean that you have to have a PhD. Qualified means first you have to have a caring heart, a listening ear, a spiritual grounding, and to be patient. Because sometimes children can be obstinate, they're angry, they're mean toward you, they talk sideways, they pop their neck, they back their eyes, all kind of sideways stuff. But the one thing I always told students, I said, I'm not going anywhere. So this is our house. We're going to learn how to live in this house. And I really want you to be successful. And I need you to want the same thing for yourself. So we're a team. You can help me.
Well, I just want to say thank you for being that teacher that just doesn't teach, that just doesn't give instruction. You communicate with that human being. And I thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
This message is titled Queen Vashti. Queen Vashti found that her body is her temple.
It's just Vashti. I was the queen of King Xerxes. Some of you probably heard about me, read about me, gossip about me in your own circles. But I'm here to set the record straight. This is my story. My husband, King, the all-great Xerxes, he was a drunk. He had his friends. They would party and celebrate months and months on end. And some of you, especially you women, say, well, you had houses, palaces, castles, temples. You had access to the finest wines and food and entertainment. You had fine silk, jewelry, and clothing. You had servants at your beck and call. Isn't that a trade-off? Well, for some women, that might have been a trade-off. But see, I was a woman who had self-worth, self-identity, value, and self-respect. On one occasion, my husband was drunk and his friends were drunk. He believed that was the most beautiful woman in the world. And at that party, he demanded that I come before him wearing only my crown. How many of you say, well, he thought you were beautiful, he wanted to show you off? Some women might have done it. Some women may have not had a problem showing their body. But I was not that woman. I refused the king's order. I refused my drunken husband's order. His friends influenced his decision making. He sent me away, never to come before him ever again. And that I would be no longer queen, and my place would be given to another. You know how the minute that you make a decision, you inhale and you exhale because you know the consequences are coming after the no. And they did. I was put away, stripped of everything that I had. I left in my garment. He married another woman. Her name was Esther. And Esther and I, we talked. I wanted her to know who she was marrying. Esther told me about her God and the God of her people. I didn't have to be psychologically and emotionally abused and handled. The crown that I had, Esther's God will give me enough.
This message is titled, I'm Free. I'm free from verbal abuse. I'm free from hanging my head low. I'm free from being discouraged about being the woman that I am. Today, I'm free.
Yes. Lord, give me strength. I refuse to be treated like this and called out my name. Lord, I'm your child. I don't deserve this. Give me strength, Lord, to say no more.
Woman.
Yes. No more. Yes.
You're useless. All you do is stay home and take care of my kids. You barely even do that right. I don't want you going nowhere. Look at you. You're pitiful. Maybe if you look better, I treat you better. You're homeless. You'll never be nothing without me. Come here.
In the past, your tongue caused deep cuts and bruises of my inward man. My posture became bent and my chin ever so slowly touching my clavicle. My arms no longer swaying with flowing ease. They were tight with tension. Learning to find happiness within myself and finding my self-worth caused the scars and the numb areas to feel again. The damages you've caused are now healed with a shield. No more. No, no, no more. In Jesus' name, no more comes out of my mouth. My head is now up and my muscles are relaxed and the motions and movements of my arms are balancing my walk without staggering hatred, anger, or fear. I'm free.
I ain't that woman anymore. No more abuse, no more pain, no more suffering. I ain't that woman anymore.
I'm not going to be this woman anymore. I ain't going to be this woman anymore. I ain't that woman anymore who looked at you all starry-eyed because you look so fine and I ignored your past when I knew your truth. I ain't that woman anymore who accepted your fears and okayed your fists bruising me from ear to ear. I ain't that woman anymore who cowered at your feet when hearing the angry sounds in your voice and you dared me to speak. I ain't that woman anymore who accept you saying, it's okay, it's all right. He just had a stressful day. I can't do this anymore. I'm not taking this anymore. I am now that woman who is finally saying no. No. Because I'm looked into myself, found myself, letting go. I am now that woman who's going to depend on herself and realize no one is responsible for my happiness but me. No man, no thing. I am a child of God.
I ain't that woman no more. No longer will I be that woman.
I ain't that woman anymore.
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 I am not that woman anymore.
I am not that woman anymore.
I ain't that woman no more. I ain't that woman no more. 'Cause I ain't that woman no more. I ain't that woman no more. 'Cause I ain't that.
Because of the foundation laid before me, I won't be that woman.
Thank you so much for your support and becoming aware of Rhythms of Unheard Voices. I got a letter here. Okay. Let's read it. It says, to the survivor, I know at times you have been beaten almost to death. I know at times the bruises coated your body and only your mind could scream for help. I understand that voice shut down because reality wasn't clear. But that look in the mirror brought your courage near. This is good. The decision to be free kept coming and going. Your environment said impossible, but your faith said, keep moving. The bruises kept the memories fresh. The healing scabs prove victory is next. The scars will remind you of how you made it over. As you move forward, you must tell another. Tell them hope is reachable and that it exists. Tell them to forgive because there's life after this. Tell them survival was proved on a cross. Tell them there is life more abundantly, even after loss. Freedom is necessary in order for survival to fit. Size doesn't matter to the survivor who wears it.
I'm just trying to live my best life and lay my burdens down. There's treasure on the inside, and I gotta bring it out. No room for negativity, I'm vibing, feeling real good, got real people around me, living life without no limits, maximizing my potential. I won't settle for less. I will not settle, I won't settle for less. I will not settle. I got drive, so I won't settle. Lead foot on the pedal. My heart beats gold medals. My efforts reflected, competing with my reflection. Gotta be better than yesterday, every day. Gotta make it count, wanna make us smile. The time is now, these vivid visions in my mental. Paint pictures on instrumentals about being made in his image. This life ain't a scrimmage, so don't treat it like a trial run. You only got one.